When you have very low volumes of colostrum and your baby doesn't need a whole lot, yes, they might nurse very frequently. It doesn't mean you're not making milk. It doesn't mean they're not getting milk. It means they are doing exactly what they're supposed to do to tell your body to make the milk.
I'm Jamie Zaki, IBCLC and Mom of 5, and this is the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast, where pregnant and new mothers learn how to prepare for and overcome breastfeeding challenges without being controlled by stress, fear, and anxiety. Each week, we'll answer your questions, share breastfeeding success stories, and inspire you to shut out the toxic whispers of the world and embrace your God-given intuition to make confident breastfeeding decisions. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast. We are in December, and I'm so excited to be in December. And I just wanted to let you know that some changes are happening around here. I am going to go ahead and cut back how many episodes I am releasing each week. I have slowly been tapering off, which you might have recognized, you might not have noticed. But for December, we are only releasing one episode a week. So that'll be 4 or 5 episodes, however many Tuesdays are in December. And we're going to continue that through January and possibly into February. And then we'll see how that goes and see if we want to pick up again or if I like doing that pace of one episode per week. Maybe we'll have some bonus episodes in there sometimes if we have some cool interviews or some, really important things that are going on in the world of breastfeeding that need to be addressed. But in the meantime, this is the plan, 4 episodes per month or 1 a week. And that's because as we go into the holiday season, I want to not be consumed by producing content, and I do not want you to be consuming content. We should be spending time with our families, not being so indulgent and so not consumable, but so consumptive. I don't know the word I'm trying to say. I think you know what I mean, though. So please forgive me for that one. Before we dive into today's episode, which is going to be 3 things that every pregnant mom should know about her milk supply in the first week, I do want to invite you to go ahead and grab that 5 breastfeeding mistakes to avoid guide. It is a free guide for you. Go ahead and download it at littlebearlactation.com/mistakes. That's littlebearlactation.com/mistakes. And there you will learn about the top 5 mistakes that I see new moms make when they are breastfeeding that can mostly be prevented. And if not prevented, they can be resolved quickly if you have the right information and support. So after you download that free guide, you'll be prompted to choose your pathway and you can let us know if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. And then you will be given more resources based off where you are in your stage of motherhood. All right. One last favor I'm going to ask you before we jump into today's episode is, could you go ahead and rate and review the podcast? Rating and reviewing the podcast helps other moms see it, helps other moms know that it has been helpful for you. So if you have been enjoying the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast, you like the conversations that we have, the tips and the tricks for breastfeeding, go ahead and leave us I'd say a 5-star review, but go ahead and leave us a review and leave us a little note and let us know what you like. All right, we are going to dive in now. I'm excited for this episode, guys, because these are 3 things that I wish I had known about my milk supply before I had babies. And it's things that I still hear moms getting wrong on a day-to-day basis. This is the stuff that I see moms posting about in Facebook groups that sometimes I'm like, you don't know that already? But then I remember I didn't know it either. And we have so much information at our fingertips, but it can also be overwhelming. So if you have been having so much information thrown at you that you have not been able to understand it all, that's okay. We are going to talk about what you need to know right now. So one of the first and most important things that pregnant moms who are planning to breastfeed and pregnant moms who don't want to breastfeed need to know is that milk production begins during pregnancy. That's called Lactogenesis I, but Lactogenesis II, which is when your milk really starts producing for your baby. That is triggered when the placenta separates from the uterus after your baby is born. So milk production begins after your placenta is separated from the uterus. What does this mean? This is really important to know because, first of all, it means that you might be leaking colostrum before your baby comes, but having lots of colostrum or having no colostrum prenatally is not an indicator of your milk supply when your baby arrives. I hear a lot of moms really worried that they're going to have a low milk supply because they're not making, quote, enough colostrum during pregnancy. And I just want to put your mind at ease. I know there's a lot of conversation out there about collecting colostrum during pregnancy. There are benefits to that. However, we don't need to get so caught up in that and sensationalize prenatal colostrum. It is really important to know that your placenta separating from the uterus is what triggers your body to start making milk. The other reason this is really important to know is because if bits of placenta are left behind or do not separate completely, that can cause low milk supply. So there are times where moms will have every sign of being able to make enough milk. On paper, there's no reason she shouldn't be making enough milk, but we see that for one reason or another, her milk supply just is not kicking into gear and not where we need it to be. And sometimes we will find that there were bits of placenta left over in the uterus that did not fully evacuate or fully separate. And not only is that a risk for infection and other complications, but it can negatively impact your milk supply. So it's one of those things to just kind of keep in the back of your head. It's not something you need to be afraid of. It's just something you need to be aware of. All right. The second thing that every mom needs to know about her milk supply is that you will have colostrum first. We talked about colostrum, right? You will have colostrum during pregnancy and the first 3 to 5 days postpartum. Colostrum is so important for your baby. It is so important for their gut lining. It is so, so important for your baby just all around. I know dairy farmers collect and save colostrum. If they have extra colostrum that one newborn calf didn't complete, they keep it in the freezer for calves whose mothers will nurse them or reject them or whatever. Like, dairy farmers know how important colostrum is for baby calves, and humans still seem to not understand how important colostrum is for us. And so it is really important that during those first few days, we have colostrum. We understand colostrum is produced in small amounts. Okay. And that is okay. That is by design. And colostrum is very sticky. It is very hard to get out. So you might not see a lot of colostrum if you are hand expressing and pumping. That does not mean that if your baby is nursing, they are not getting plenty of colostrum. The function and mechanics of nursing is very different than hand pumping or hand expressing or pumping. And it is much more efficient as long as oral function is working the way it should be. I will caveat that. But that colostrum is going to be the first milk for the first 3 to 5 days. It is so beneficial for your baby. And then around day 3 to 5 is when you are going to transition to having a full milk supply. So that's when you're going to start seeing that your milk is increasing in volume and changing color to that thicker white color. And then maybe you can feel the presence of it in your breasts, right? And you can see it. You see it more. Then you'll see the colostrum. That'll happen around day 3 to 5. It really depends on every mom. Some moms have risk factors that delay the onset of milk production. And others just, will get their milk really, really fast. I've seen moms that on day 2, their milk is increasing in volume already. It's really up to you and your body, but there's a wide variety of normal, and I don't want you to assume that you're not making milk just because it's day 3 and you haven't experienced that full transition of milk yet. Another thing that can delay onset of milk production that you should be aware of is major blood loss. So sometimes during birth, moms will hemorrhage. Sometimes after birth, moms will hemorrhage. If you have a cesarean, hemorrhage is a higher risk. And in these cases, major blood loss can delay milk production. It doesn't mean that you will not be able to make a full milk supply. It does mean that it might be seriously delayed, and it might take some very serious intentional planning to build up your milk supply and make sure your baby's getting enough milk. Sometimes that looks like using donor milk. Sometimes it does look like using formula short term, but there are ways to implement those supplements that can encourage your milk to increase, that can support milk production while making sure your baby is getting what she or he needs. You can get what you need to build up that milk supply again. I'm not going to go into a full layout of what that looks like. Inside of my breastfeeding class, I do teach a class called Avoiding Formula and Smart Supplementation together. And it talks about how to avoid unnecessary formula when it might be necessary and how you can use it in a way that actually supports your body making milk. And then I have one bonus tip that I talk about all the time, and it is supply and demand. For each of these scenarios that we talked about, supply and demand is what is ultimately going to help your body understand how much milk it needs to make for your baby. The more your baby stimulates the breast, the more it's telling your body to make milk. So in those early days, when you have very low volumes of colostrum and your baby doesn't need a whole lot, yes, they might nurse very frequently. It doesn't mean you're not making milk. It doesn't mean they're not getting milk. It means they are doing exactly what they're supposed to do to tell your body to make the milk. This is where we see a lot of moms start supplementing unnecessarily and then wondering why their milk supply is low because they are not utilizing that supply and demand to their benefit. In fact, they are answering the demand they're answering the demand to their baby's demand with a supplement without putting the demand on their body, which then decreases supply. I hope that made sense because I realized as I said it, I kind of talked in a circle. Inside the 5 mistakes to avoid when breastfeeding guide, it is free. We talk a little bit more about that kind of top off trap and why certain things don't always mean that your baby is not getting enough milk. And inside the Breastfeeding Academy, we go deeper into how to build up a strong milk supply. I teach you my Confident Mama Milk Maker method, where you learn the basics, you get a good, comfortable, effective latch, and then you build an abundant milk supply. Visit littlebearlactation.com/mistakes mistakes to get your free guide. And make sure that if you enjoyed this podcast, you go ahead and scroll down, leave me a review, and let me know what you liked. Let me know what questions you have, and let me know if there's any other topics you want me to cover in a future episode.
All right, Mama Bear, that is a wrap for today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident or a little more prepared for breastfeeding, can I ask you a quick favor? Go ahead and leave me a review. It helps other moms find this podcast and join us in this amazing community of fierce and confident mama bears. And hey, if you know a friend who could use some encouragement or real talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and all things motherhood, share this episode with her. You've got this, Mama Bear. Trust your instincts, stay fierce, and I'll catch you in the next episode.